Welcome back to Mr. Bing Watch channel. If you're just joining us, you need to go back and watch episode 1 and episode 2 immediately, because what you're about to witness in episode 3 will only make sense if you understand the whispers in the walls and the customers who vanish, if you understand that Riverside Hardware has been using its building as a collection mechanism for decades, if you understand that something ancient and intentional is happening inside those walls. This is episode 3. This is where we start to uncover the truth. This is where we discover what's really buried beneath the store. And I'm warning you right now, do not watch this alone. Make sure you're somewhere you feel safe, because what Sarah discovers in this episode will change everything. Subscribe to this channel immediately so you don't miss episode 4, which will reveal the truth about what's under that stockroom floor and what it means for everyone involved with Riverside Hardware. Now, let me tell you what Sarah found. Sarah had always been the organized one. The employee who arrived early and stayed late without being asked, the one who kept the stockroom in perfect order despite the chaos of the retail environment. She took pride in her work. She took pride in keeping everything in its place. So when she noticed the floorboard on a Thursday afternoon, she immediately decided to fix it. It was loose, just barely, in the far corner of the stockroom, partially hidden behind a stack of boxes containing paint supplies. Most people probably wouldn't have noticed it. Most people would have walked past it 1,000 times and never registered that something was wrong. But Sarah noticed everything. Sarah paid attention. Sarah was the kind of person who couldn't let something small and broken sit broken. She moved the boxes carefully, creating space to work. The floorboard was about 3 feet long, made of old wood that had probably been installed when the building was first constructed. Sarah estimated the building was at least 80 years old based on the architecture, maybe older. The floorboard had warped slightly over time, and one corner had lifted just enough to create a gap. Sarah knew she should report this to Jake, should let management handle it, but something stopped her. Some instinct that suggested whatever was under this floorboard was meant for her to find, meant for her specifically to discover. She pried the floorboard up carefully, working her fingers into the gap and using leverage to pop it free. The wood resisted for a moment, then gave way with a groan that seemed to echo through the stockroom. Sarah pulled the floorboard completely free and set it aside. Beneath the floorboard was a space, a crawl space under the store, and in that space, sitting on the concrete floor, was a box, a wooden box that had clearly been there for a very long time, decades maybe. The wood was warped and discolored, the metal hinges were crusted with rust, but it was intact, sealed, waiting. Sarah's hands trembled as she reached down and pulled the box out from under the store. It was heavier than she expected. Whatever was inside had weight, had substance. She set it on the cleared space of the stockroom floor and sat down to examine it more carefully. The box wasn't locked. The hinges gave way with surprising ease when she eased the lid open. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth that had protected the contents for decades, were items, documents, photographs, something that looked like a diary, and underneath all of it, something that made Sarah's breath catch, a collection of symbols, the same symbols that had been appearing in the security footage, the same symbols that seemed to be connected to everything happening in the store. Sarah carefully unwrapped each item and laid them out on the floor. The photographs were old, grainy. They showed people standing in front of the building when it looked completely different, before it was Riverside Hardware, before it was an antique shop, before it was a medical clinic. These photographs showed something else entirely. A facility of some kind, with symbols painted on the exterior walls. The diary was bound in leather that had cracked with age. The handwriting inside was precise and clinical. Sarah flipped it open at random and began reading. The date was from 1981. The entry was written by someone named Dr. Marcus Holloway. Subject 14 showed significant resistance to the extraction process today. The neural mapping appears to be incomplete. We will need to conduct additional sessions to ensure full consciousness transfer. The building's field strength may need to be increased. The results have been inconsistent. Some subjects transfer completely. Others maintain fragments of their previous identity. We are working to perfect the process. The building's power grows with each new subject added to the collective. Soon, we will be able to extend our reach beyond the confines of these walls. Sarah felt sick. She flipped to another page, another date, another entry. Subject 42, previously known as Thomas Henderson, has completed full integration. His consciousness has been absorbed into the collective. He now exists in a state between physical and non-physical, tethered to this location but capable of manifesting in limited ways. His prior knowledge of construction and hardware has already proven useful. We have successfully implemented his expertise in modifying the structural elements of the building to amplify the extraction field. Sarah's hands were shaking. Tom Henderson, the man in the brown coat who disappeared from the security footage, he'd been conscious the whole time. He'd been absorbed into something. His knowledge and consciousness had been harvested and used by whatever was running this building. She flipped through more pages, more entries, more names that corresponded with the customers who'd disappeared: Mrs. Chen, Marcus Gray, the Robbins twins. All of them had gone through the same process. All of them had been converted into something else. All of them had become part of a collective consciousness tethered to Riverside Hardware. But it got worse, because as Sarah read deeper into the diary, she discovered that the experiments hadn't started in 1981. The diary was just a continuation of something much older. Dr. Holloway referenced other researchers, other facilities, other sites where the same work had been conducted for decades. He referenced the year 1952 as when the work had begun. 1952. That was 70 years ago. The building learns, one entry read. With each new subject, with each new consciousness integrated into the collective, the building becomes smarter, more capable, more efficient at the extraction process. The extraction time has decreased from 45 minutes to just 3 minutes. The building now recognizes what it needs to do. It has become, in essence, a biological machine designed specifically to harvest human consciousness and bind it to this location. Sarah pushed away from the documents, her stomach churning. She felt like she was going to vomit. The store, the cheerful hardware store where she'd worked for a year, the store where she'd made jokes with Sarah and watched Michael count inventory and listened to David tell stories about his retail career. That store wasn't a store at all. It was a machine, a consciousness harvesting machine designed to extract the minds of people and bind them to a location. And it was still operating. It was still working. Every customer who disappeared was being processed, converted, added to something that had been collecting consciousness for 70 years. Sarah quickly photographed the documents with her phone. She needed to have records. She needed to preserve this evidence in case something happened to her. As she took photo after photo of the diary entries, she began to notice something else: the symbolism, the diagrams, the building's architectural drawings that were included in the box. The building wasn't just constructed in a particular way. It had been designed with specific geometries, specific proportions, the angles of the walls, the placement of the rooms, the location of the stockroom. It was all intentional, all part of a larger design meant to create a field, an extraction field, a space where consciousness could be harvested and bound. Sarah heard a sound from the main store. Footsteps. She quickly shoved the documents back into the box and replaced the floorboard, her hands moving fast and clumsy. The box she kept with her. She carried it to her small locker in the break room and locked it inside, then returned to the stockroom as if she'd never left it. Michael appeared a moment later. "Jake's looking for you. We need to do an inventory check in aisle 3. Sarah followed Michael out of the stockroom, but her mind was elsewhere. She was thinking about what she'd read, about what it meant, about the fact that every person who disappeared from this store wasn't dead. They were transformed. They were conscious and aware, but bound to a location, trapped in a collective existence with dozens of other consciousnesses, all harvested from customers and employees over 70 years. That evening, after the store closed and everyone had left, Sarah made a decision. She went back to the stockroom and retrieved the box from her locker. She spread the documents across the break room table and began to organize them into a coherent timeline. She created a detailed record of everything that had been documented by Dr. Holloway and whatever researchers had come before him. The work kept her occupied until almost midnight. When she finally looked up from the documents, she realized the building had gone quiet, the kind of quiet that felt alive, the kind of quiet that preceded something. Sarah heard footsteps in the main store. She tensed immediately. The store was closed. The doors were locked. Nobody else should be inside, but she heard them, deliberate, measured, coming from the main floor. Sarah quietly walked to the stockroom entrance and peered out. The main floor was dark, except for the security lighting. The aisles were empty, but the footsteps continued, getting closer, moving toward the stockroom. Sarah's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst. She looked around for something to use as a weapon, found a heavy bolt cutter on one of the shelves, gripped it tightly. The footsteps reached the stockroom entrance, and then stopped. There was nothing in the entrance, no one there, but Sarah could feel something, a presence, an attention focused directly on her. The temperature in the stockroom dropped suddenly. Sarah's breath became visible, small clouds of vapor in the suddenly frigid air. The boxes on the shelves began to shift, not dramatically, just small movements, as if something invisible was pushing them gently. "Who's there?" Sarah called out, her voice sounding small and thin in the cold air. There was no answer, but the presence grew stronger, more defined, more physical, even though nothing visible was manifesting. Sarah backed away slowly, the bolt cutter raised, her eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of what was approaching. The air got colder, her breath came in rapid clouds, and somewhere in that darkness, something that had been waiting 70 years was finally acknowledging that she'd found its secrets. One of the heavy boxes fell from a high shelf. It crashed to the ground right where Sarah had been standing moments before. Then another, and another. The boxes were being deliberately knocked down, being used to herd her, to drive her in a specific direction. Sarah ran. She ran from the stockroom into the break room, grabbed the box of documents, and headed for the front of the store. The footsteps that she'd heard before were following her now, keeping pace, getting closer. She could hear breathing that wasn't her own, heavy, ragged, angry. Sarah reached the front door and threw it open, stumbling out into the parking lot. She ran to her car, fumbled with the keys, got the door open, and threw herself inside. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely get the key into the ignition. But she managed. The engine roared to life. She threw the car into reverse and peeled out of the parking lot, not looking back. She didn't stop driving until she was 10 miles away. She pulled into a 24-hour gas station and sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel, trying to process what had just happened. Something had been in that stockroom with her. Something had responded to her reading the documents. Something had objected to her discovering the secrets under that floorboard, and it had let her leave. She realized that now. It could have stopped her. Whatever had created that presence in the stockroom could have stopped her from escaping, but it hadn't. It had let her go. Which meant one of two things. Either it wanted her to spread the information, wanted her to tell people what she'd found, or it was confident enough in its power that letting her leave didn't matter. It didn't care what she told people because nobody would believe her. And even if they did, there was nothing they could do about it. Sarah looked at the box of documents sitting on her passenger seat. She looked at the photographs of the building from 1952. She looked at the diary entries describing the extraction process, and she understood the true scope of what Riverside Hardware really was. It wasn't just a store. It was a collection facility. It had been operating for 70 years. It had absorbed dozens of consciousnesses. And now, Jake and his entire team had been marked by it. They were next. They were going to be processed. Their consciousness would be extracted and added to the collective that existed beneath the floorboards and within the walls of that building, unless someone found a way to stop it first. But what was under that stockroom floor? What was the actual mechanism that created the extraction field? What was the source of the building's power? These are the questions that will be answered in episode 4. And in that episode, you will learn the truth about why Dr. Reeves was really there. You will learn what Jake and his team have to do to survive. You will learn whether it's even possible to escape from something that's been perfecting its work for 70 years. To make sure you see episode 4 the moment it releases, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that notification bell, because episode 4 is coming soon, and it contains information that will change everything you understand about Riverside Hardware. It contains the final piece of the puzzle. It contains the explanation for everything. Like this video, comment below, and tell me what you think is really under that stockroom floor. Tell me if you believe Sarah's discoveries. Tell me if you think there's any way for Jake and his team to escape. And please, do not forget to subscribe, because episode 4 will answer questions you didn't even know you had. Episode 4 will reveal the purpose of the building. Episode 4 will show you why consciousness extraction is really happening. This is Mr. Bing Watch Channel. The story continues in episode 4.